Good morning, I'm Dr. Martin. This is the Institute of Regenerative Education, and usually I don't drop multiple videos in the same week, but a couple conversations already started this week, and I felt that it was prudent to do this. Now, we've talked on this subject before, and something happened today, and it just kind of changed my mindset for how I present this topic and really how I think it should be weighed. Now, we're going to talk about courage today. And it may not seem like this is something that should come up in conversations about biologics, but bear with me, be patient, because I think you'll see it has more to do with your practice than you believe. Now, we're going to start the way I usually start, with a story. I have a very small circle, very, very small. My wife, my kids, and then probably maybe 4 other people that are really extremely close to me. But there are people that I respect considerably, and I value their judgment and I value their opinions. When we started this Facebook group in 2023, I posted a couple of the videos, and somebody that I actually like, is a very close friend for a long time, made fun of me just brutally for just kind of walking up to the camera with a cup of coffee. He just thought it was hilarious and righted me and chided me aggressively. And had I stopped that whole paradigm, we wouldn't be here today, 186 hours of lectures later, 3,100 or nearly 3,100 Facebook followers in just this group, all working collaboratively to try to build what is really a wild, wild west in the regenerative medicine space. But somebody else also commented. And it was somebody that I went to school with many years ago. Worked with many years ago. In one of the very first practices that I worked in, he was there. And he was just fabulous on social media. Did these really great, well-edited videos, but just very engaging with the camera. Very charismatic interventional pain doctor. Still one of my very close friends. And I literally borrowed my courage from him. And I watched countless videos that he'd done just to try to figure out how I was going to do something like this myself. And I have no idea what budget he had, and I have no idea how much he spent, but it was a lot. And his content was really, really engaging. He hasn't posted anything for like 4 or 5 months. And he sent me a text with a post that he was putting up for the first time in 4 months. And he's had a really, really rough go in his life. And I know that because I've been constantly a part of it. He calls me all the time and he checks in on me regularly. And I check in on him. Just, how's it going? What are you up to? What are you driving? Right? But that little bit of a touch point, just from somebody that I like and somebody that I respect and somebody that I trust. We practice essentially in isolation in medicine. And we have so much competing for our own attention and for our own patients and for how we care for patients. And so the fact that he hadn't posted anything for 3 or 4 months and then sent it to me just to get my opinion before he even posted it online, it wasn't a brag point for me. To be perfectly honest, I was pissed at myself that I'd waited for 3 or 4 months to check on him more, ask deeper questions, and do a better job of figuring out why he wasn't posting. Why he wasn't dropping content, why he'd lost his courage that he had years prior. I'm going to go through an exercise with everybody. Because I had a conversation with a doctor today. Fabulous doctor, brilliant. Obviously very type A, cares immensely for her patients. And she was just struggling profoundly, not at understanding the science, not at understanding products, not at understanding how they were applied. And it wasn't until I listened to her with more intent and asked a few deeper questions that I figured out how and why she was struggling. It actually had nothing to do with a knowledge gap. It didn't even have anything to do with a courage gap, because I thought that's what it was. Just she needed a little more gusto. She needed to kind of borrow some of my courage or some of the other providers' courage. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with how she was being reinforced for providing care. Very well-trained provider, working in another provider's office, being paid salary. Zero incentive for her greatest gifts, which were just tremendous intellectual curiosity, just a dogged passion to try to get patients better, and a tireless effort, spending, ruminating, digesting anything and everything around a patient's issues just to try to make their lives better. But because she was just being paid salary and no one in her mind valued all the hard work she was doing, there's a roadblock for her offering more expensive biologics than just the PRP that the office was currently giving. If she had a patient use more expensive biologics, write a bigger check, none of that benefited her, even if it benefited the patient. And it's her provider's lack of foresight, because he's ultimately going to lose that doctor. And I told her the same. I said, if he doesn't see how much value you bring to the practice and you're only working there part-time, don't double down in a practice that you're not being reinforced in. I think it's time that you open your own. Let's go through an exercise. Everyone's seen me do triangles multiple different times. Almost everyone works out of 3 different models. They work out of fear, they work out of fulfillment, and they work towards something. And I call those receipts. I don't even know if the IE is correct. I think that's right. Let me explain. If you're in regenerative medicine right now, right, there's tons of stuff that you can be afraid of, right? We're going to call this regenerative medicine, right? And this is the regenerative medicine triangle that all of you, whether you believe it or not, are buried in. What are your fears? Well, we've got all sorts, right? We've got regulatory, right? That's both FDA and Med Board. This could be Pharmacy Board, right? We've got perception. Perception from who? Peers. Hell, just people in general, right? I'm an extremely well-respected orthopedic surgeon. My peers are going to think that if I'm using umbilical cord-derived products and not an autologous product like Wharton's jelly or bone marrow aspirate concentrate, that I'm going to be seen as a quack. Because regenerative medicine it isn't real, right? There's not any randomized controlled trials. Both of those things aren't true. There are randomized controlled trials, right? You just got to look for them. Umbilical cord-derived biologics have been used for 50, almost 70 years, right? But there's a real fear that I'm going to be perceived as no longer the top of the crop. We'll address this as well in a second. What else do you fear? Well, these products are expensive. And my overhead's going up. Medicare's cutting reimbursement. I don't know how to balance this so that I don't basically go broke trying to create a whole new business model and changing what I know. I've done the same thing for so long, and everyone knows me for what I know. They know me for what I'm able to deliver. If I change who I am, will they forget about me? Will they think that because I'm doing something different, that it's something to fear or something to ridicule? These are all legitimate fears. And every one of you has to address these at some point in time. What about fulfillment, right? Well, what's the fulfillment in this, right? I would like to say better outcomes. I would like to say better reimbursement. I would like to say better quality of life. But if you're just starting out, how on earth do you achieve any of these? Because you haven't even started yet. You literally are trapped here, and something has to convince you to move here. So maybe you borrow courage from somebody else, right? Maybe you borrow courage from a trial. Maybe you borrow courage from being part of an IRB. I don't know, right? But you do. Because only you are going to be able to figure out what removes fear, provides enough fulfillment so that ultimately you get the receipt. What is the ultimate receipt? Well, the receipt could be anything, right? Because now your receipt has changed. You may have been top of your class in orthopedic surgery. You may have gone to the best residency at Mayo Clinic. But if you're in the state of Florida and you're not using regenerative medicine products, you're stuck with $1,000 for a knee replacement. Hip replacement, like $1,095. Where after 20% for those Medi-Medi patients, after 65% overhead, you're making about $125 a month for 3 months for that 90-day global care. And an integrated chiropractor down the street is getting paid $7,000 to do a knee injection with an allogenic biologic. He didn't go to Mayo or Boston University or Harvard for his training. He's like me and he went to school in the Caribbean, right? Doesn't have anything like your receipts. So how do you compete when the whole marketplace has changed? How do you compete when all the plaques on your wall don't mean anything to patients anymore because you're not able to get the same outcomes that the integrated chiro is down the street? Where do you get the courage to say, well, you know what? Maybe the PRP that I'm using or the BMAC that I'm using isn't going to give me the best outcome. And no matter what my colleagues perceive, even in my own practice, the rubber's meeting the road. I can't even go on vacation this Christmas with my wife, and we go to Hawaii every year. I can't go because I can't afford to go, because Medicare's cut me so bad, and the majority of what I do is hip replacements. That's my bread and butter. What I know is hip replacements, and I'm the best at it. My surgical technique is fabulous. I don't get dead legs. I don't get neuropathy afterwards. I don't have non-union. I've got amazing surgical outcomes. Maybe, just maybe, your receipt can be the same. You just simply have to change what that receipt looks like. I had this conversation with an orthopedic surgeon last week. That orthopedic surgeon was that. Hands down the best with hip replacement. Ivy League pedigree all the way through, right? Very reluctant to talk to me because he'd done extensive research on me. So he knew all of my checkered past. He knew my training and everything else, right? For his level of training, me going to University of Michigan, I mean, you just like, one of these things, right? I mean, very highly pedigreed guy. Worked Northeast for a long time, then moved to Florida, lived in a beautiful area of Florida in a really nice house that he was now struggling to pay for. In a really, really nice practice where the overhead was killing him. Driving really, really nice cars that he was having trouble just maintaining, because nicer the car, more expensive the maintenance. And his primary fear was that he knew how to do hip replacements, but no one in his practice was using anything other than autologous biologics. And he was worried that despite the fact that there's a stem cell bill in the state of Florida, it wasn't the FDA or Med Board or Pharmacy Board or the state coming after him. It was his perception in his group, because he was the most pedigreed guy in his whole group. Many of the other people in his group benefited from his receipts because he was so busy. They got collateral referrals because their schedules were more open. They were benefiting from his receipts. One of these things has to motivate: fear, fulfillment, or your receipts. And it's only going to be overcoming fear, changing what fulfills you, or changing what a receipt looks like to you, that's going to give you the courage to change how you practice medicine. And make no mistake, regenerative medicine is a fundamental shift in how you practice medicine. It's a fundamental shift, right? So what did I suggest to that doctor? And I've heard this now from multiple surgeons. I said, well, you do hip replacements and you're King Kong hip. Well, maybe you need to do regenerative hip replacements. And maybe you need to change yourself from King Kong surgeon to a regenerative surgeon, because that is the hot newness. And maybe, as opposed to just settling for Medicare rates, you should charge cash on top and maybe use an exosome product like Nano Air 7 to 10 days pre-op to down-regulate the inflammation that's inevitably going to happen intra-op. And maybe around the operative site, because you're in Florida, and these people want to wear swimsuits and short skirts and shirts and everything else, right? Maybe you drop a little bit of Wharton's jelly around the incision after your terminal closure, because you're going to have a zipper about like this, right? so that scar isn't quite as prominent, so that the incision doesn't open up, so that the healing time is potentially faster. Now again, we're not making any claims. I didn't tell him to claim that the exosomes was going to treat OA, that he was going to treat surgical issues. No, right? Because, and I'll say this again, just like I do in almost all my videos, the FDA is your friend. Can you give glutathione or a Myers cocktail prior to a hip replacement? Sure. Can you give people calcium, magnesium, vitamin D prior to a hip replacement so that their body heals itself at a cellular level in a more effective way? You betcha, right? We don't give NSAIDs, we don't give prednisone pre-op, because NSAIDs, prednisone pre-op do what? Smack blood sugar, they're catabolic, and they can create an element that, might make the patient more susceptible to infection. But giving something like nano air pre-op that's going to down-regulate inflammation, not treat anything, not an anti-inflammatory, not a drug, right? But we know that cutting this open, ripping the bone apart, hammering in a pylon is going to cause a fair amount of inflammation. And if there's less there post-op, patients tend to do better. Now, this wasn't enough for him because this was so significant. So it needed to be this plus this. He wanted to be a co-investigator. In our observational registry. He wanted to track safety outcomes on these products. And he wanted to do the extra work, the optional work, of tracking patient-reported outcomes. Because he changed his receipt. His receipt was fear that his colleagues would perceive him as doing something that was basically quackery. Because where he was trained was very conservative. But he was completely lacking fulfillment. His reimbursement was terrible. His quality of life was terrible. So in this model, his fear was very high. His fulfillment was very low. And his receipts, I didn't have any receipts because the receipts were certificates that have been on the wall and haven't changed for years. So how did he overcome his fear? How did he improve his fulfillment? He changed his receipt. His receipt now became, I'm going to be a regenerative hip surgeon. And every patient I'm going to enroll in an observational registry. And I'm going to prove how good my outcomes are. He already had the best reputation as a hip replacement guy in his area, but he wasn't able to prove it. His proof was already on the wall. His plaques and certificates from his undergraduate and graduate and fellowship training at some of the best institutions in the world. We just had to give him a different receipt, right? Now he can prove that he's the best because he's going to track his own patient-reported outcomes in the observational registry. Using the biologics wasn't the receipt he wanted. Proving he was the best was. And proving he was the best eliminated the issue of perception because our observational registry has third-party oversight from an IRB. Everyone has different receipts. Everyone has different fears. Everyone has different measures of fulfillment. Right? If any of you know, my receipts are esoteric, right? This is wind in the willows. This is a first edition, first impression, one of my favorite books, right? There are damn few of these out there. Damn few, right? This is, I don't know, $7,500 book, right? I don't even read it. It just sits on the shelf, right? But anytime that I'm talking to a provider, or anytime I'm giving advice, or anytime I'm putting together a lecture like this sits behind me as a receipt, right? Because there were things that I did in my own life to change what I feared. A lot of that was regulatory because I've been hunted by the feds. I've testified for 4.5 hours in front of the feds. I did 4 years of probation in front of the medical board, right? Pharmacy board never came after me, but I had a scarlet letter around my neck for 4 years, right? How did I overcome all those fears? How did I get the confidence to be able to stand up in front of a whole bunch of people that I don't even know, right? And decide that anything that I had to say had any merit, right? I changed my fulfillment from trying to prove that I was the best pain doctor around to helping other providers be the best at what they do. I changed my own fulfillment. I replaced me proving to myself that I was the best pain doctor wherever I was to helping other providers be the single best provider they could be in their area, no matter what their specialty was. What was my receipt? Don't care about likes. I don't care about social media. I don't care about being famous. I don't care about being infamous, although that's becoming more prevalent now than being famous. I like my quality of life. I get to spend more time with my wife and my kids. I like my reimbursement because when I do see patients in the office, and I see very few every week, those patients that I see, right? They're coming to see me and they know what to expect. They're not going to give me their insurance. They're not going to give me a Groupon. They know they're going to write a check. But the reimbursement that I'm getting paid is worth my time, right? And how do I stack receipts? Well, I stack them on a shelf. Some people stack them in a garage. Some people stack them on a wall, right? Now I stack them on a shelf because that receipt I can pass down to my kids. And they're just not making any more of those receipts. And so when I'm long gone, all of these lectures will probably go into, I don't know, they'll go probably into nothing. And all of the education and all the stuff that I've tried to teach everyone may be erased, right? Our whole Facebook group could be deleted with just one swipe. And maybe it will, right? But the receipts that I collect, those get passed to my kids. And so if they remember or see or understand nothing of all this, right, at least they have that to remember me by. But what do all of you leave behind in the wake of all your efforts to overcome fear, find better fulfillment, stack more receipts? Well, God willing, you get to spend more time with your families. God willing, you get to get much better outcomes for your patients. God willing, you make more money, and so you can do more things that benefit your life, benefit your church, benefit your communities. And ultimately, hopefully, the receipt that you stack isn't a certificate from medical school or residency. It is tons and tons of cards or social media posts and thank yous from tons and tons of patients who can't say enough good things about the care you've rendered and about the ways you've changed their lives. Because ultimately, the mark of a truly amazing provider is the legacy of the quality in life that we lead for our patients and leave for our patients. If our patients are living better lives after our care than they did prior to seeing us, that ultimately is the true legacy. I know the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. No one's ever created an alternative. I actually don't think that's the best Hippocratic Oath. I think it's stoic, but I think it should be something more along the lines of do maximum good. If we do maximum good for our patients, as opposed to doing no harm, right? How much better are our patients doing the maximum good that we can by them and for them? I'm Dr. Martin. Have a very blessed day.